One of the most fantastic gravity-defying events of all time was the Ortega Prize, a $25,000 reward in the 1920s by a hotel operator who would give the reward to the very first person who could fly across the Atlantic Ocean from New York City to Paris. Remember, you know who was successful, but I want to tell you about three of the competitors because they give some insight into how we might live today. First is, we got a picture. This is Renee Funk. He was a World War I ace from France, and his plane was as expansive as his personality. He wanted to arrive in his homeland in style, and so he had three others in his crew. His plane's interior was more like a living room. There were heavy chairs, mahogany tables, a sofa that could convert into a bed. He took everything, including the kitchen sink. There was a cooking area with a small sink in his plane. He brought cases of wine and champagne. He loaded up on gifts for friends. This was going to be a luxurious flight. He arranged just before takeoff for a local hotel to bring him a fresh dinner, clam chowder, terrapin, roast duck, and turkey. To keep it all warm, he placed it in an insulated cabinet. And it was hard to know if he was really trying to fly across the Atlantic or just enjoy the ride. Now, his plane was designed with a weight limit of 20,000 pounds. It weighed in at 28,000 pounds. He had to retrofit an extra wheel on the tail of the plane to just make it down the runway. And as you might imagine, gravity defeated him. Even with full power, the plane barely made it to the end of the runway. It rolled over a small incline, toppled forward, burst into flames. Funk and his navigator made it out, but two of the crew members did not. This was not good. One of the other teams was Charles Levine. This is the next, this is like you know the difference between these historical figures. Well, anyway, this is Charles Levine. He financed another team that was vying for the Ortega Prize. He had a great plane, a qualified crew, but they never really worked together as a team. They didn't have a clear goal because, man, this guy liked drama. He wanted two pilots ready to go, so at the last moment he would decide who was going to fly the fight, who was going to make the flight. Now, he eventually abandoned this idea, but there were still two flyers, Chamberlain and Bertrode, and they disagreed on virtually everything about how things were going to go. One had one strategy, another had another, and that played itself out in any number of ways. And just when it appeared that things couldn't get more dysfunctional, he presented contracts to his flyers the night before, and essentially saying that he's not going to share any money or publicity from either of them if they made the flight. That all the respect and all the publicity would go to him. Well, one of the pilots filed a temporary injunction, a legal matter. It never took off. Now, the last one that competed, you may or may not recognize this face, this is Charles Lindbergh. He wanted to be the first person to fly from New York to Paris and claim the prize. And of course, you know how this story goes. And now Lindbergh was involved in every aspect of the trip. He went to the factory where his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, was being manufactured and made sure to keep it simple. It only had one engine to help conserve fuel. It had one seat for one pilot to save weight. He famously trimmed the edges of his navigational papers to save weight. There were no luxuries, not even a forward windshield. He looked out the side window and used a small periscope to see what was in front of him. Now, as you know, he was successful. May 21st, 1927, he landed in Paris nearly 33 and a half hours after he took off from New York. The press dubbed him Lucky Lindy for his success. But of course, we know that it wasn't luck. Lindbergh defied gravity by design. And today we continue a series called Defying Gravity, in which we're examining generosity, what it is, why it can be hard to experience, and how Jesus offers us a way to break free from financial gravity. 2 weeks ago, we met a rich young man who was experiencing so much financial gravity that he couldn't bear to break free and follow after Jesus' invitation to be a disciple. He could not or would not submit the last part of his life, his wealth, to follow after Jesus. Last week, we considered the real struggle that it is to break free of financial gravity and the struggle to find freedom in generosity. And yet, the good news we remembered is that we can experience generosity, a generous life, because of God's generosity with us. Now, this week we focus on the message that I want you to hear in this story of the Ortega Prize. Generosity occurs by design. Generosity occurs by design. Statistics say that a significant percentage of U.S. citizens give little or no money to charitable organizations of any kind. We can be sure that many wish that they had done so and hope to be generous in the future. Now, the problem is, I think, for some of us, that we're a little bit like these competitors in the Ortega Prize. Some of us, like Funk, so weighed down by the gravity of possessions that we can't experience the freedom of generosity. And some couples and families living like Levine and company, they have competing goals, conflicting personal values. They aren't on the same page about communicating about how they use the resources that they do have, and they never seem to break free either. And if we want our life to be a generous one, we need to be a bit like Lindbergh. Because generosity happens by design, it happens by intention, by planning, and we need to think about what we can accomplish, plan a strategy about how to get there, and then take courage to act in that way. Just as Charles Lindbergh didn't count on good fortune or luck, we too must have a clear action plan to be generous. Now, I've talked to many generous peoples over the years as a pastor, and I want to share with you 3 secrets that they've shared with me that I want to share with you. And the first one is this: to be generous, we need to make a budget. You know this. Budgets remind us that all finances matter to God. If faith is indeed central to how we live, we must begin with the portion of our income that we plan to invest in the work of God's kingdom. If we don't prepare this first, then what we're giving God is what's left over. And sometimes, as you know, when we've paid all the other bills, the things that we spend during the month, sometimes not much is left. And my invitation for you is to remember that discipleship can struggle when it begins after spending ends. Now, the Bible is clear that what comes first is providing for the needs of ourselves and our families. When we care for those that are in our households, we create a safe environment for them to live. We sustain our lives and our livelihoods, and it creates a space for us to be generous with what our gifts and graces are because we've met our own needs. So it's a place of safety and even abundance, where marriage and relationships and children can develop in a healthy way. And so caring for ourselves, for our household, is important first. Now, Paul tells us in relatively straightforward terms that people need to care for members of their family, especially if they're vulnerable. In 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 7 and 8, Paul writes this to Timothy: "Teach these things so that the families will be without fault. But if someone doesn't provide for their own family, and especially for a member of their household, they have denied the faith. They are worse than those that have no faith." Friends, it's important that you care for your household first. Now, I want to also give you an image about why a budget is such an important tool. And we've got a ropes course video. It starts off quiet, and then we've got someone that will speak, so be ready on the sound, I think. Heads up, if you don't like heights, heads up. There's some footage from this ropes course. Let's take a look. Have you ever been on a ropes course? I haven't been on one in years, but I just love the experience. It's fun to challenge myself and to achieve what I might not have thought possible. And one of the things that's important in every ropes course experience is to hear words from the instructor, the person that's giving us instruction. Do we have volume on this?
Possible. So you'll have 2 clips on you, and one of them is always going to be locked.
Go and turn it up a little bit so we can hear.
And this is so that you're always locked into the course. You cannot detach from the course at any point until you're on the ground, basically. So this is the key that will allow you to move throughout the course and stay safely attached at all times. So the way this works is you're going to get your unlock clip, put it over here, slide it over here, and get that little barrel piece, and push it up in there, and you'll hear a click. And now you're safely attached to the course. You're coming to my first bridge or element, and we'll find another tweezle. Put your clip on, attach, and now you can walk across the bridge. If at any point you are to slip off the bridge, your clips will catch you and you will be fine. Bonsai! Woo.
Pretty nice, huh? I think that'd be a lot of fun. I would love to be at a place like that. And I actually don't know. Is there a place like this around Topeka? Maybe there is. Tell me afterwards. Now, I want you to repeat just what the instructor said here. The key to getting around this course is this carabiner, this one piece of metal. It says, if at any time you slip and you fall, don't worry. Why? Because the carabiner is going to catch you. Now, there have been some tough economic times lately, and some people in our community and congregation find themselves in a financial place where they're going to be okay. They're going to make it through. And for some, it's because during the years that have been better than this one, they've saved money, they've paid down debt, they had a budget, maybe they still need a job or looking for one right now, maybe, but they're going to be okay because they've been living in a certain way. And some people in our community and congregation find themselves in a different place, a place where they're uncertain about what is exactly next. Sometimes this is out of people's control, and yet sometimes it's because of choices that have been made that lead up to today. And some folks find themselves without any safety line, with no carabiner, just trying to go through the high ropes course, just holding on for dear life. And I want to encourage you, whatever place you find yourself today, there is a way ahead. Did you notice how he stood and fell backward? Now, how could he do this? Well, he knew that he could because, he didn't want to spend the whole journey like that. But he knew that when it would fall, or if things would go off course, and he was able to be held up, he would be safe and be able to get back on track. And that's a little bit like a budget. And that's what I would love for you to have in your life. Now, Nicole and I have been more intentional about tracking our spending and following a budget this year. We have goals set for saving, and it's helped us. It's helped me make a small decision not to spend something one day because I know that we're saving up for something else. Now, let me be clear, we still have room to grow, but using a spending plan and setting a budget has helped us look at our spending and how it lines up with both our faith and our priorities. Generosity to others will not happen by accident. However, it can happen when we become serious about being stewards of our income and make appropriate allocations in every area of our financial world. It's like being clipped in on the ropes course. I'm held in with a safety line. Another tip to living a generous life, a secret of financially generous people, is to live simply. Now, this is something that I struggle with at times, and yet we remember that if you want to live within your means, it means living a simple life, keeping it simple. That sometimes we make decisions that push us beyond our means, some extravagance or things that's beyond what's necessary, into something that it just isn't really necessary, but it feels really pretty good, or seems like it does in the moment. Now, the principle of simplicity is the single most effective tool that people can use to escape our culture's financial gravity. When you see that ad, when you see the sign that entices you to do this or to do that, to buy this thing or to go to that place, remember that we don't have to give into that. Now, we do from time to time, because sometimes we see simplicity as absence. It doesn't mean that we're living in a place where the bed is hard, the car is undependable, and we just have to wear a camel's hair shirt like they say in the Bible. But this is not the case. Sometimes we assume that the good stuff inside the ads on our phone or in the deals offered by local retailers is all that there is, and only focus on those things. And yet, the reality is that all of that consumption can leave a trail. And that if we live simpler, we can find ourselves able to be more generous. Now, sometimes we can think about simplicity as freedom. It's freedom from the pressures of debt. It's freedom from the complexity of having more than we need. It's not about denying ourselves. It's about avoiding things that keep us from completing our mission, from living the way that God has in mind for us. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 and 18, Paul writes this: "Tell people who are rich at this time not to become egotistical and not to place their hope on their finances, which are uncertain. Instead, they need to hope in God, who richly provides everything for our enjoyment. Tell them to do good, to be rich in the good things they do, to be generous, and to share with others." This principle of simplicity, this sorting of what we need and what we want, enables us to not place our hope in our finances. Simplicity enables us to be content with what we have, and no longer do we feel a need to always go on to the next newer and the next better thing. Finally, the third thing I want to share with you about financially generous people is to set generosity goals, and many of you already do this. One practice that enables people to make a journey of generosity each year is to set a numerical goal for the good that they hope to do with their time and their money. People who can make a plan for generosity each year pray about God's calling in their lives and what God might be calling to them. They consider what activities bring joy to themselves, what activities bring joy to God, and where those come together, that's a place where they can participate. Projecting financial goals for the year that align with these activities. And it can be incredible to see what we can do when we place our values and our faith and align with our resources at any income level, when we set goals for generosity and order our lives in that way. Now, inevitably, you might find yourself saying, maybe some folks say, I just can't do that. I can't afford it. And if that's how you feel, I encourage you to set a goal and then see if you can reach it, no matter what that might be. Setting the goal and moving toward it is a powerful tool in a journey of generosity. Now, I want to share an example of someone who set really an incredible generosity goal and reached it. One of our staff shared this story with me a couple weeks ago. You can find it online, and it's the story of Chuck Feeney. Maybe you saw this article. This is from Forbes magazine, but there's been a number of articles that have been written about him. He was the founder of Duty Free Shoppers, which is in international airports, you remember. He founded it in the 1960s, made billions, that's billions with a B, billions of dollars. And he pioneered the idea of giving while living. His idea was to give away money while he was alive to be able to see the results with his own eyes. And his foundation is closing down this year. They're signing the paperwork to close down their foundation through which they gave. Over 4 decades, he and his wife gave away $8 billion to charities, universities, and foundations worldwide. $8 billion. Can you imagine? This is a commitment to generosity. He made a budget. He lived simply throughout his life and created a 40-year plan of generosity. 40 years. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm never going to give away that amount of money. I don't know that amount of money will ever pass through my hands in my lifetime, and I don't know if it will for you either. And yet, if you adjust the zeros to what makes sense for your life, to our life, for your household and for our household together, we can make a real difference. We can live into Jesus' reminder that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The good news is that when we're generous, we are not doing things for God so much as we become a part of what God is doing in the world. Like Charles Lindbergh and Chuck Feeney, nothing will get in our way when we know what's important and we align ourselves together. Now, if you're an active member of our church, you're going to be receiving an annual giving commitment card in the mail this week. If you don't receive one in the mail, we'll have them here to pick up next week, or you can complete it online. And this week, I invite you to set a generosity goal for the year ahead, to set a goal for giving through the church. And then complete your annual giving commitment card. You can mail it back to the church, you can fill it out online, and let that be a launch pad for the year ahead. Now, I just want to invite you to consider giving in proportion to your income, because that's how the scriptures invite us to give. And with the tithe, or 10% being the goal. Now, sometimes people ask, well, how do I figure that exactly? Is that gross income? Is that net income? You can do it however you want. I'll tell you how Nicole and I have made this calculation. We look at our paychecks. We calculate what we're going to receive in the year ahead in a year's worth of take-home income. Then we move the decimal place one place to the left. And that's our starting point for what we're going to give to God's work through the church. And then we consider how far beyond that we may be able to go this year, given the circumstances in our life and what our goals are in the year ahead. Now, as United Methodist pastors, our salaries are public record. They're public information. So I want to tell you that we're committing to give $12,540 next year by recurring online giving with our bank account. We're going to fill out our card. We're going to return to the church next Sunday. And I want to invite you to set a goal for the year ahead as well. Generosity is the path. We can defy gravity and cross the great distance from committed consumer to generous steward if we set our goal. If we have Jesus as our guide and as our direction, as we let the Holy Spirit flow in and among us, God does great things in our lives as we grow in our generosity, as together we share God's love in our community and beyond. Will you pray with me? Oh God, we give you thanks for the opportunities that you place before us, for the opportunities for living as your people, to be a part of your work in this world, God. We ask that you would help us use our time and our resources, that you would help us as individuals and as a congregation to set goals, to plan, and to live into the ways that you're calling us. Oh God, we offer ourselves to you and ask that you would use us. In Jesus' name, amen.